All right. Welcome in, everyone. I am Mr. Marca, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. It is Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, where I go live. Two other nights I go live. Babe, can you not eat chips in here?
I was trying to serve you.
I go live on Tuesday nights, Friday nights, and Sunday nights, all at 7 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you guys come in here. Make sure you guys are coming in, staying updated, because I know the media is not doing their job. So let's get started. There were 3 attacks today. The one that most people heard about was the Pentagon. The Pentagon had 2 packages that was sent to them. This is I'm going to be picking out from an article from the Blaze. There was 2 packages that were shipped to the Pentagon, and they got stopped during their normal screening process. And they were found to have ricin in them. If you guys don't know what ricin is an extremely deadly. It's a toxic compound that's made from castor beans. If you guys watch Breaking Bad, that was the drug that they were utilizing for I think 2 or 3 of the seasons in there. So it's a huge issue. Ricin is often being used with terrorist attacks, right? Whenever you want to go in and you want to kill people, it's a powder. It's not. I don't know how how it actually gets into the body. Basically, once it's inside, if it's ingested, it can cause nausea, vomiting, internal bleeding of the digestive system, and the hepatic system can also fail, and the person affected by the toxin compound can die from circulatory system collapse. So it's a huge thing, right? Huge to see that go into the Pentagon. A lot of people are already jumping on board and saying, look, this is 100% because the Pentagon is being led by President Trump. This is where it's going. It needs to be further investigated further. We can't just say there's a package there for. It was directed at 2 people, Jim Mattis and Admiral John Richardson, who is the Chief of Naval Operations. He was the Chief of Naval Operations when I was in there, when I actually got out of the Navy. So it's 6 years or 5 years, 3 years, 3 years, 3 years, and it still hasn't changed. So I think his time's coming up here soon. So those 2 were addressed to Jim Mattis and John Richardson. So going to the highest echelon, going to the highest tier you can, is where that was being focused at. So that's definitely interesting, right? And having ricin, a terrorist, and often used by terrorist motivations, being in there, that's a huge thing. This is the story that a lot of people have heard already. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. But the 2 other attacks, right? The more well known, we'll just go from most known to least known. Ted Cruz. So he has a campaign office down there where he's running in the state of Texas, and his campaign office received an envelope with white powder. Two staff members there were sent to the hospital. They were not employees of Ted Cruz, so it could have been like another affiliate of some other organization that also utilizes the building. But it was the 6th floor that got evacuated. So this is a building of substantial size. And the test came out that they were negative. But the problem is that you have a substance, and so it's not necessarily the threat of the substance, it's the implied threat that goes on along with it. We do know that Ted Cruz is battling against Beto in Texas, and there's a lot of discussion on how that's going to go. There's a lot of vitriol. There's a lot of hatred. There's a lot of contempt that's going on from both sides, of course. And so that one, it's a little bit more clear that it could be a politically motivated one, right? This was going to a campaign area, which is something I should have mentioned when we were talking about the Pentagon. And the Pentagon, it's not clear that it's a politically motivated because they're Republicans in office. It could be an organization, a group, or even an individual that just detest what the Pentagon has been doing, detest a lot of the actions that are being headed at the Pentagon. And so it could be in that way. So it's not always clear how these attacks are going through. We can't just see the outcome of it and makes large speculation. It's not going to portray us in a good light, right? When we're in the midst right now of the Brett Kavanaugh situation where a lot of people are getting ahead of the horse, this is another instance in where we cannot do that. We have to wait for more information to come out. If there's no more information, we can only speculate. We won't know. So it is in the trusty hands of our faithful government officials to be able to perform this investigation and find something. If you guys have a lot of faith in that, I'm proud of you. I'm happy that you have those views. I don't think that we're really going to be able to find much. So we had the Pentagon getting ricin. We had Ted Cruz getting a white substance being shipped there, non-toxic substance. Now, this last one is the one that everyone didn't get to hear. This is the one that all of the media misses. So in Maryland, Representative what was his name? Andy Harris. Representative Andy Harris today had protesters breaking down his door. So what had occurred is in Maryland right now, there's a big debacle. There's a big discussion over legalizing marijuana for medicinal use. Not talking about recreational, not talking about just decriminalizing it, but opening it up for the medical purposes. So there were some peaceful protesters there that decided that they were going to smoke pot. So here's the report from CBS Baltimore. Police said Christy Furness of Salisbury, Maryland, and Rachel Ramon Dolan of Washington, D.C. were charged Tuesday with possession and consumption of marijuana in a public space after allegedly smoking marijuana outside of the office. Ooh. Police responded about 12:15 for a report of unlawful demonstration activity in the House building. Upon arriving, police say they were informed the demonstrators were attempting to enter the office. So they were literally trying to get in. They were breaking into his office because of political discourse, because they didn't agree with him. He opposed it. He's a Republican, so he opposed the idea of having medicinal marijuana use. These protesters were recreational marijuana legalization protesters, so they were taking an entirely separate argument there. They were having an entirely different stance there altogether. But the idea that these three activities happen in such a quick succession, the idea that we're seeing a consistent trend of members of Congress, of members of the administration. Yes, they do. I agree with you, Kofefe. They're being ran out of restaurants. They're being ran out of gasoline stations. I love the way she says that. They're being ran out of department stores. They're being ran out of everywhere. They're being told by Democratic members of Congress that they are not welcome here, and they are encouraging the populace to do this. So whenever there's these violent attacks, whenever there's these threat of attacks, whenever there is implications that just because you can't handle the civil discourse of disagreeing with somebody means that you are going to aggress against somebody or their property. It befuddles me that we need to have a conversation and say it's not okay to throw a temper tantrum when you're 26 years old. It's not okay to threaten somebody just because you're not getting your way. But this civility that we lack in this country is going to be a major. Well, first off, it's continuing to create this divide. It's creating a division in which both sides are no longer capable of even speaking the same language. Discussions are, you commonly use the same words, but the words have such a divorced meaning that conversations can't happen. So the divide has started there. Now you have members of Congress promulgating it, pushing it, adding oil to the fire. It's going to become a civil war. I've been talking about this since I started doing Scope, since I started doing Facebook Live videos from my personal page, that we are in a mostly nonviolent civil war. And as time continues, as this is not being denounced by the side that is committing it, this is going to continue. And the violence will not be a day in which, I'm sorry to say it, but snowflakes will be happy. They're not going to be satisfied. The first time that they get into a conflict over one of these decisions, and you have the gun grabbers versus the gun advocates. The gun grabbers are not going to survive by saying, I have words, and they're going against you, right? That doesn't work. So the civil war that's starting, that the kindling is there, everything is stacked up, everything is ready. You got Maxine Waters, you've got Nancy Pelosi, you've got Chuck Schumer, you've got a lot of these high prestigious Democrats that are just merely pouring oil all over it, and they're waiting. Stephen, welcome. They're just waiting for that spark. And then you'll see them just disassociate. You'll see them all just disassociate. They won't denounce it. They will just disassociate. They will go and fade off into the shadows. I don't like talking about left versus right. It's one of the things I've been trying to fight against myself on doing. But the left wants to see this country burn. They want to see this country burn. When they don't denounce things and then point to the Republicans and say, you're not denouncing this, so we don't have to denounce that. No, you denounce violence when violence happens. When there is evidence of violence, you denounce it. When there are people in the streets that are protesting against others, that are punching people in the face, when they're aggressing against another, and you don't denounce it and you say it's okay because they thought they were a Nazi, no, that's not okay. I don't care. I've met Nazis. I've met people that believe in white supremacy. I've met people that believe in black supremacy. I've met people with the most egregious views that you can find. And yet I managed to go the entire conversation without threatening them or without hitting them. And I actually helped change the minds of a couple people. Amazing. But instead, what we have is don't let them be welcome. Don't let them be here. Don't. And it's that bigotry. This is what really needs to come out. We need to start pointing people what bigotry is. Bigotry is not being tolerant of somebody else who holds a different view than you. I think that everyone in this room, everyone in my state, everyone in this country, everyone in this world is bigoted, right? Because we're all intolerant of something. I'm intolerant of rapists. I'm intolerant of murderers. I am intolerant of a lot of things. I can admit that I'm a bigot. Try to tell a lefty that they're being bigoted. Give them the definition. Take the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition. Put it in front of them and have them explain how they're not a bigot. You will watch heads explode. Heads will explode. So we need to figure out a way to stop these attacks. We need to figure out a way to douse out this oil swamp, the swamp of oil that's sitting on this stack of wood that's just waiting for a mere spark. It doesn't mean don't tolerate anyone with a different point of view. It means you're not tolerant of a group of an individual or anything else who holds a different view than you. So it's not just that you're bigoted against everybody. You're bigoted against a certain specific group. Let me pull it up just for clarifications. Webster bigot. There we go. All right. A bigot is a person who abstainedly or intolerantly devoted to his or her own opinions and prejudices. Wow, they just changed that up. It was different from the last week. One who regards or treats members of a group, such as a racial or ethnic group, with hatred or intolerance. Members of a group. So they say such as a racial or an ethnic group, but it can be a group of any sort. So it's use that and just watch their heads just explode. They won't be able to function. They won't be able to figure it out. How do bigot's such a bad word. We have to understand the context of words is what makes a word good or bad. Something like a bigot. You're just intolerant. Is intolerant a good thing or a bad thing? It depends on what you're intolerant of. It's this nuance that comes with the words. And because the left has created so many buzzwords in order to push political speech or to make things politically correct, since they made these buzzwords, now they can't even admit to them. Having honest conversations with people just shuts them down now. And this is being promulgated every day. It's being promulgated by members of the Democratic Party. It's being promulgated by the media. It's being promulgated on Twitter. It's being promulgated on Facebook. It's being promulgated in every aspect of our lives right now. And people are not waking up to this. So it's those 3 attacks. I'm hoping that that's the last 3 attacks that we're going to see for a long while. I hope. I don't have high hopes for this. I don't expect it. I'm intolerant people who write a check in the grocery store. Who wrote that? SoCal, fantastic. Thanks, Cheryl. When's your new mic coming? It's being shipped from Alaska, so we'll see. Well, he bought it from Alaska. I don't know if he bought it in, 10 days. I think it was 10 days. So we'll see. One who holds and blindly intolerant to one particular creed and opinion. Thank you. Thank you. See, PMS always coming in with the good facts and good stories. So hopefully we'll see these die out. I don't have high expectations that will occur. I'm expecting it to be ramped up after the 2018 elections, after the red wave and the blue wave fails, and it just kind of is just politics as normal. Depending on the way that the House goes, right? I'm still of the belief that the Senate will be going in favor of the Republicans, and the House is where it's going to be a toss-up. If it stays, if Trump maintains a Republican control, then the civility will be dropped another level, right? Because when the left goes low, they'll find a way to go lower. And I think that's a realistic expectation. It's not a hopeful expectation, but that's a realistic one. We'll see the ramping up, right? The continual control, because now, it's just not going to be a good thing. Junior, I was just about to segue into that, so thank you. So yes, what did Kanye talk about? So Kanye West was talking about the Constitution. If you guys saw, he was on SNL. He got a lot of boos. He was wearing a MAGA hat, Make America Great Again hat. And he went on there, and of course, Kanye West, being free from the shackles of the Democratic Party, of the leftist view, of the leftist agenda, the leftist narrative, and being a quote-unquote free thinker, has mean that he is an Uncle Tom, he's a disgusting person, he's unbecoming of his race, this, that, and the other, because if you don't toe the line, right? I'm trying to remember which podcast I was listening to, but they were like, when it comes to Black people, right? The Democratic Party says you can be whatever you want to be. And then you're like, all right, well, I want to be a Republican. They're like, oh, you can't be that. You don't get that kind of a freedom. That's disgusting. You have to toe the line. You have to be on our side, or you can't be free. We'll have the public just tar and feather you, and that'll be your life. You're free to do that, but you deserve it because you're a disgusting person. So Kanye West goes on there on the SNL. During the end, he was doing a speech. He was going off on a rant. The network ended it, right? Cut him off, went to the credits and everything else. So there's a little bit of a controversy there. But one of the things that he was mentioning was the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment. And he said, we need to abolish the 13th Amendment. Now, everyone knows the 13th Amendment is the amendment that ended slavery, right? So I want to read to you guys the 13th Amendment. Now, I don't think that we should be abolishing it. I don't think that there's a necessity for it anymore. I don't think that there's a necessity at all. I think that, all men are free in this country. And so that's all men, women of all creeds, of all ethnicities, of all everything, right? Everyone is a free person here, and we shouldn't be susceptible to slavery. But there's a clause in here, and we'll get to it. So the 13th Amendment, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So if we don't want to abolish it, the one part that I would agree with, and that is to amend it. And part of this amendment would be to remove the except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. So what that means, what that part means, thank you, Stefan, is that if you are found guilty of a crime and you were thrown into prison, you can be punished with slavery. You can be punished to involuntary servitude. You can make license plates, you can make furniture, you can make a lot of things while you're sitting in jail, and you do not reap any benefits of that. So if we were to remove that and have the focus of when people go to prison or to jail, a rehabilitation program, a program in which we try to help the people who commit these crimes and actually try to return them to being a productive member of society, if you will, then we should be focusing on that and not making them do free work and making money off of it. So I would like to see that part be amended and taken out. I think that would be a good change of pace for that. If not, I really don't see a necessity for even denouncing slavery. It's not that I'm an advocate for slavery. It's not that I want to put people in shackles or anything else. I believe in freedom, of course, as a libertarian. But the idea that we would go in retrospect literally 200 years and resort to that, I think is completely hyperbolic and ridiculous. Was this point? I think that's why I even mentioned it. He was mentioning that we aren't free because of that, and he was even specifically talking about the prison system and everything else, and getting people free from that. I think that would be a productive change, right? Because I've been doing research in the background, and I haven't gotten everything together yet. But to give you guys a quick rundown is the idea that I do want to see a major reform to our prison systems. It needs to be less of a system in which everything is provided to them, and it's just a matter of do your time, sit in time out, do some labor if you need to, and then get out and be a free person again, right? There's no rehabilitation process within that. So I think that that's something that we need to be working on. At the same time, I think that repeated crimes would be something that would escalate at a faster rate, because if you are victim crimes, if you escalate the victim crimes, then people are less likely to commit them. But if it's a victimless crime, they of course shouldn't be there. For smoking marijuana, certainly should not be there. Things like that, drug use, the freedom of that. But we need to have the reforming of our prison systems where the inmates are a dollar sign effectively. It's not. They shouldn't be looked at like that. And they shouldn't be looked at as slave labor or free labor, because then that incentivizes more people to get picked up, more charges and everything else. There is that line of reasoning out there that, hey, look, if we jam-pack full this prison and we have people working, then we can maximize the amount of money that we bring in. right? So there is the profit side of that. And that's certainly something that needs to be discussed and needs to be handled. Oh yeah, absolutely. Daniel Barron, welcome in. If you guys haven't followed Daniel Barron, please do follow the Anti-Antifa. Always great shows. He had a show last night, Monday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern on Periscope. Make sure you guys tune in for that. Always a good time. And it's funny. Daniel comes in. We're about to talk about Trump, so and not in necessarily the best of ways. So President Trump finally comes out again. He spoke about this after the Las Vegas incident, and now he says he's finally close to finalizing the effective ban on bump stocks. Now, for those of you who do not know what the bump stock is, the bump stock is basically just it's the stock of a gun. So it's the butt end of the gun that goes up against your shoulder. And the way that it works is you pull the trigger to a specified area. So you pull it in just a little bit, and the recoil will cause the bump to bump off of your shoulder, which is why it's called a bump stock, and actually cause once the gun has performed its entire cycle, it reloads another round in, and so it automatically fires it off. As you just sit there and hold that trigger, it's going to continually fire rounds. So it takes a semi-automatic and shoots it similar to a fully automatic. It is slower than a fully automatic after shooting a fully automatic a couple times now. It shoots slower. It jams up. There's many problems that are associated with bump stocks. They're extremely easy to manufacture and create. You can do it with a 3D printer. You can do it with a lot of household items. It is not a complicated item at all. But President Trump has decided that this was going to be the next step in limiting the people's ability to keep and bear arms. And the reason why I say it in such a way is because there shouldn't be any limitations. In accordance with the Founding Fathers, in accordance with the Second Amendment, in accordance with the discussions that were held, the fights, the arguments, and everything else surrounding the Second Amendment, the tenor or the intent of the Second Amendment was to not allow the American populace to be at a disadvantage compared to our own military or another country's military. We were to be able to carry the same arms that the military utilized, because there was never any plans to have a constant standing army like what we do have now, but we were always to be able to defend ourselves. And so even the ineffectiveness of what a bump stock is, it is still something that is not bannable. It is unconstitutional, because it's just another attachment. So the precedent, the discussion that the naysayers, if you will, say, well, the bump stocks there's no need for them. They are ineffective, and so it might just be better to get rid of them anyways. I don't have one. I don't like them. There's a lot of things like that. In the point that I want to make, is that just because you don't practice your right in that way doesn't mean that you get to tell someone else they can't. So that negates the first one, right? The need. You don't need it. You don't have to have a need in order to speak, but you're free to speak. I don't get to say, I don't think you have a need to say this, so you can't say this anymore. I don't get to control you. You shouldn't be able to control others. Well, they're really ineffective. So then what's the harm in letting them stay? I don't like them. I don't like a lot of things. I don't like the fact that the Glock 45 comes in a 9mm. I don't know why you have a gun that's called Glock 45 that comes in the 9mm, that shoots 9mm bullets. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't want it banned. I would much rather the Glock company actually understand, hey, don't call your Glock 45 if it shoots a 9mm. And yes, they also shoot the Glock 45 also has a series that runs 45 ammo as well, 45 ACP. So Trump during this article says we're knocking out bump stocks. We're in the final 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll be able to write out bump stocks. And then they talk about the Las Vegas shooter. This article is from Reuters. While machine guns manufactured after May 1986 are outlawed in the United States, bump stocks are not. So they try to conflate, right? Machine guns are manufactured after 1986 are outlawed, which is somewhat of a lie. Bump stocks are not. Yes, because machine guns shouldn't have been banned either. Ban slings next. Yes, ban slings, ban the scopes, ban the red dots, ban ban everything. Just ban everything. You can't ban the gun itself. So we can ban the ammo. There was one member of Congress that called for the banning of magazines because once no joke, her train of thought on this was if we ban the magazines, then eventually the magazines that are already out there, they will eventually run out of ammo, and then there's just no more guns. She didn't understand the fact that magazines are reloadable. Amazing how people who know nothing about guns are able to come out here and talk about it. But back to President Trump. So with this idea, it just brings me back to not Jefferson. Edison. Yeah, Edison. Who said, if you give up a little bit of your freedom for a little bit of security, you will receive neither. Right? You lose them both. Does that mean I have to start incorrectly calling them magazines or clips? Yes, you have to start calling them clips. So it's, and I also had another friend, a friend of mine on my personal page, who had the idea, and he said, I'm willing to use these bump stocks as Jefferson has been quoted as saying that. I know that Jefferson was, but it was also somebody else. It wasn't Madison. But his idea was, I'm willing to let the bump stocks be the sacrificial lamb, if you will, right? This is the worst couch auction I've ever seen. There's not even a couch. Appreciate it, Leonard. And I disagree because we already have the machine guns as the sacrificial lamb. We already have what did I mention before? Oh, suppressors. Suppressors are extremely, right? You have to go out and get a special license. You have to pay each year to have a silencer, to have a suppressor fixed on the end of your gun. Those were both sacrificial lambs. Those were both unacceptable in accordance with the Second Amendment, but yet they live on. And so I'm hoping that we can all come together and we can say, look, maybe we stop letting our gun rights be infringed. Maybe we stop letting our natural rights be taken away from us, and we stand up for ourselves, because it's another point in which, sorry to say it, both parties are the same party. They slowly want to take away your rights. They slowly want to take away your liberties. They slowly want to take away your freedoms. They will justify it, and they'll say, look, it's not that serious of a thing. We can take this little bit from you. We could take this one little bit from you. And they just chip away, chip away. Right now, right, they can get, the FSA can go get your cell phone's metadata. What can they get next week? Are they going to be able to eventually get your emails? Are they eventually going to be able to figure out where your car is gone, where you're going, where you're driving? We have to stop them. I think that the best way that we can get through this is if we all go and read the Constitution together. We go and learn, we discuss things, we provide each other with these documentation, and we can learn about these things, and we can stand up, we can talk with others, educate them, and actually stand up for the Constitution. Stand up, and by standing up for the Constitution, you're not just standing up for just a piece of paper. You're actually standing up for each individual in this country. You can stand up and you won't even have to fight for parties. You're just fighting for the individual. You can stand up morally and say, look, I will not be infringed. It's amazing. I'm actually wearing my Don't Tread on Me shirt, but I will not be infringed. I will not be a victim of this government. I will not give up my rights, my freedoms, and my liberties because other people have done dastardly things, because other people have been egregious, because other people have said nasty things, because they've done nasty things and shot people, because they've done this, then done that. They are not me. You punish the criminals. You do not punish the victims. You do not punish the bystanders. You do not punish the people that were not associated. We have to make this be heard, and it needs to be heard by everyone in office. I don't know how many of you guys actually like the Constitution. I hope you guys love the Constitution just like I do. But if you guys would be interested, it's something I've been thinking about, is actually making a group and having people just come in and we can talk about the Constitution. We can talk about the different amendments. We can talk about different current events, correlating that to the Constitution, and figure out, is the government actually working for us or against us? And it's clear to see. It's clear to see that they are working against us vehemently, with great vigor. And we got to stop it. That's why I'm going to be running for office. That's why I'm going to be stepping up and ensuring it. Do I have a lamp? I do have a lamp. That's why I'm going to be running for office, to make sure that I can fight for you. I'm going to be fighting for everyone. It's not one of these political feel-good moments. I'm not saying this to get votes. I'm saying this because this is what I believe in. I believe in the smallest government possible. I believe in a government that doesn't affect you, that protects you, but doesn't affect you. When you, in my country, in this great country that we live in, we were to be free men and women. Men is synonymous with women as well, but not in a gender sense. Let's get rid of that. Your feet keep stopping. I'm sorry. Is it better? We were to be free men, and slowly over time, we've become slaves to the system again. We are taxed out the ass. We had the Boston Tea Party, over 3% tax. It's an LED. I'm not sure. And now we're being taxed at an effective rate of 40%. Oh, good. So 40% tax rate, and we are silent. We are asleep. We don't care. Why? Well, these taxes are justified. Taxation without representation. Whenever you are being taxed and it's being provided to another person, it's like an LED light. As I break everything in my house.
What did you just break?
I don't know. Something fell. When hold on, where was I? I'm really blinking. Stefan, help me out. I look like Marcus Luttrell. Where'd you get the lamp? My wife found it. Oh, taxation, yes. So whenever you were being taxed, I think I've heard that one before. I just forgot his name. So when you're being taxed and your money is being taken from your paycheck and it is being provided to somebody else, do you think that that's taxation without representation? To be completely honest with you, it's not. Not in the slightest. Why is it not? Because you're not being represented by it. You're not being represented by the money that is being taken from you. So that's a huge fundamental issue. Irish, welcome in, man. When you are being taxed and it's being sent to another country, is that? Oh, Stefan said, hey. Sorry.
Hi.
When you're being taxed and it's sent to, am I a patriot? Depends on what you mean by a patriot. And your money is being sent in for foreign aid, that's taxation without representation. Thank you so much for the super hearts. When you are being taxed and it's going to pay your members of Congress, it's taxation without representation. But all of these ideas are gone. But it's the excess. Well, when the government stops running excess, then we can talk about taxation not being so wrong. Taxation is wrong because it's the stealing from another without their consent. Which foreign aid? So there's foreign aid that we're sending money all across this globe. Which foreign aid? I believe in Nigeria. I believe that we are sending money for kids to have iPhones. That's interesting, right? Because that's totally what our taxpayer money needs to go to. It's several $1 million. It's not a large money, but it's not the idea of the value. It's the idea of the intent, of the purpose. That's what I fight against. In MBK, you had said the taxation. I want to point out to you, or I want to ask you personally, because you said that. If I take from you, it's called stealing, right? If I take something that you own, you possess, that's called stealing. At what percent does it no longer become stealing, right? If I take 1% of your stuff, it's still stealing. What do you mean kids buying iPhones? It's the money is being sent over, and I believe specifically for Nigeria, who sent, and they were actually funding people to have cell phones. Like that was legit. It was that disgusting. This was brought up during the omnibus last year. Rand Paul had even brought that up. He brought it up in a series of tweets in which he was calling out the disgusting things that were within that bill. So it's stealing, whether it's 1% of your stuff or 100% of your stuff, right? On that basis alone. Taxation is taking from people with or without their consent. Now, if you consent from it, you can say, look, I consented to it. I never consented to the government spending money that is not accepted. We give everyone a bonus. They still haven't found the Nigerian prince. No, not yet. So on just the moral level of taxation, it's disgusting. It's theft. It's extortion. And the best way that I've ever heard it, and I wish Shane was still in here because I have to attribute it to him. Taxation is slavery because we live in an uncivilized society. There's nothing that the taxpayer dollar goes to that the free market couldn't provide on its own. Now, I say that, and to an extent, I disagree right now, or I disagree with the idea of military and of the judicial system, right? Of enforcement of the laws. Those are the two areas where I really do disagree with. Taxation is happening since the beginning of society. So because it's been there for forever, it's okay, right? Slavery was actually a thing up until 200 years ago as a widespread accepted ideology in service. So you can see the disgusting conflation between the two. I don't think that just because something is there or something is been there for a long time means that it's now that we should just turn over and accept it. So when it comes to all of these things that we're being taxed for, I first want to ask you, where is the justification for all these systems? So if we remove everything that's not constitutional, I wouldn't make that parallel. Why not? I would. I wish I was as popular as Texas. When you, I forgot where I was going for. Oh, if we looked at everything that was constitutional and not constitutional, we'd be removing roughly around, I think the number was like 72% of our spending, of our government spending is somewhere around like 72%. Could you imagine if the government just lopped off 3/4 of what it was doing? How much more effective it would be for the 25% that was left or the 28% that was left? It would be much more effective because they could actually focus on it. They could actually do a better job of it. But it also relinquishes this back to the states. The states would do much better at spending the money of the people than the federal government would. And you know who would do better than the states would? The cities. You know who would do better than the cities? The streets, the towns, the households, the individual. Because they would know more intrinsically about the needs and the necessity than the person a mile away, 10 miles away, 50 miles away, 1,000 miles away. They would know so much better. So we need to decentralize as much as possible. And by abiding by the Constitution, we do that in a large capacity. Now, if you want to have a socialist state, if you want to have a communistic state, like, I don't know, what California is doing, you can do that. You could do that. Multimillionaire athletes wouldn't have stadiums to perform in. Yeah, exactly. Because California just now, they passed net neutrality. They passed net neutrality in California. And immediately as soon as that got dropped, the DOJ is filing a suit. And they're saying, no, that's our territory. We get the claim that. Sorry to say it, I don't think the DOJ has standing. I don't think the DOJ, the federal government, can point to anything within the Constitution and say, that's totally my authority. If it's not enumerated, it falls to Article or the 10th Amendment, falls back to the states or the individuals. So California, go ahead and be calming. Go ahead and make sure that grandma's knitting company pays the same amount for internet that what Netflix does, that what Hulu does, and all of those other ones. Welcome in from Switzerland. If you want to do that, you go right ahead. I'm not living in California. You couldn't pay me enough to move to California. I refuse to live in a state that would rather lop off its own face. Net neutrality is commie. No, net neutrality is not communistic. Net neutrality is socialistic, which is the step away from communism. But it is the government having control of. Hold on. It is the government having control over a service that is being provided by the market. It is absolutely 100% socialist, and it's disgusting. Thank you, Drock. Net neutrality is just horrible. The government sucks. Thank you, PMS. The government sucks at controlling things. It sucks at regulating things. Don't give them the power. Don't give them the authority. And then they move it down to the state, and then you can say, you suck too. You shouldn't have this authority either. You should have more control over your state government than you do over the federal government, which is why you should care, and you should want all of the power going to your states. If you want to have state-ran healthcare, you can have state-ran healthcare. California, go ahead and try it again. I know you're going to blow out your budget. I know you're going to double it, and that's fine. You can go ahead and double your budget, have your state-ran healthcare. Don't screw over the other states because you want something. You can screw over your rich people there, and your rich people will leave, and that's fine. You can just shoot yourself in the foot. It's fine. You do what you want to do. Don't force us into your socialistic things. But I just seeing the DOJ file a lawsuit against that, it befuddles me. It sucks for all of the people in California who despise net neutrality, who hate it, who just had it slapped on them. You're going to have to suck it up or leave. And I would recommend on the leaving one. But it needs to. That's the way our country was supposed to be. With our founding fathers, the original idea was that the 13 states were their own nations. They were their own country. A lot of people never left their own state. There was a couple of our founding fathers that only left to go in and have discussions, debates, and sign paperwork. Other than that, he was in his own state. And that was the way that it was. That's the way it was supposed to be. You had all the states of the United States that would come together, and they would be protected by the federal government, and they would be able to choose how they ran. Now, with that, you'd have some states that suck, California, and you'd have some states that would do better, that would actually enable freedom, that would have lower tax rates, that would incentivize people to move there, and then they would flourish. And so you would have competition. You would have free markets to be able to say, is necessary to keep the government running. But why does the government need to run? You would have the free market of the states to where you can say, look, this is a better state. This state I will do better in. I will have more freedom. And having more freedom here is where I want to live. And that's why the 10th Amendment was there. That's why the 10th Amendment was there, so that you could have that freedom, so you can practice that, and you can have the states competing to get as much of the population as they could and provide it for as many people as they could, and to do everything that they wanted to, and to have the best plan possible. It was a way that we could continue to make ourselves better. Because the government has some obligation towards the people, such as protection. That's about the end of their obligation, and they receive quite a bit of that. I also think that there can be a voluntary side of things where people can say, look, I want to donate for my protection. You don't need to do it through taxes, and you certainly don't need to do it through my income. Maybe Kanye just thinks it should be up to the states if they want slavery. No, so that's a misinterpretation of what he was talking about. He was talking about the amendment, or the excerpt of the amendment that talks about if you are convicted of a crime, then basically the 13th Amendment doesn't apply to you. And that's really the pinpoint of what he was saying. But of course, Kanye is not a great orator. He's not somebody who comes out and does public speaking with eloquence or with specificity. And so his message was poorly taken. What should be the role of the government in your opinion? Only protection. Protect the sovereignty, I think, would be the most succinct way to say this, right? To protect the sovereignty. You protect the sovereignty of the individual when others aggress against you, when others commit crimes against you, right? That's the judicial side of things. They can enforce the law in that capacity. And then protect the sovereignty of the states. Don't let each state try to control another state. And then protect the sovereignty of all the states altogether. Don't allow invasions. Don't allow other countries to commit acts of war against us. That's the basic premise of exactly what the Constitution says. California sucks, I agree, but give more money than receives as far as tax dollars go. But they give more money than receives as far as tax dollars. They give more money than what they receive, so that they don't balance a budget very well. That's another argument against them. How would they raise the money to protect the people or sovereignty? I already mentioned that. I said through voluntary transactions, through people donating it, through people doing those things, right? Because there's no necessity to take from everybody when there are plenty of philanthropists out there that would. Who would win in a fist fight, Trump or Biden? I mean, Trump's got the reach on him. Let's be honest. Trump's got the reach on Biden, and it'd be easier. Come on, Jason, donation. Hey, you asked. In my ideal world, there would be donation. I would donate. I would donate more than what the government takes from me to provide for my protection. I would be willing to do that. What about the free riders? Oh my word, not the free riders. Do you know that the bottom 30% of our country doesn't pay taxes? What about those free riders? Trump has small hands though. Yeah, smaller the hands, the more it hurts though, right? Isn't that the way it goes? And I MBK, I know that you went straight to the extreme, right? Basically, your argument was the government that we have is fine. Maybe they should balance the budget, but everything that they do is fine. Versus mine, which I say, look, let's cut out a large portion of what they're doing, right? 72% of what they're doing. It's not inherently wrong. It is inherently wrong because you're taking from people, right? The ends cannot justify the means. Okay, but the ends do not justify the means. There are processes, there are ways that we can voluntarily pay for the government and all that it does. It's a small percentage. 40% is not a small percentage. I would disagree vehemently with that. 40% is a major. On top of the idea that we get taxed, right? You go to work, you get taxed for your income. You get home, and you also pay all these other taxes when you do that. You get home, you decide you're going to go pay for something, you're going to buy something, you get taxed for that. Many countries tax much more than the USA. That's fine. Other countries can be as socialistic, communistic as they want to. That doesn't mean that the government that's here gets to decide that they're going to be socialist. It's not in accordance with the Constitution. The thing that they all swore an oath to has its role. We can agree on that, and they do need to get the means to do that. and they need to get the means to do that. No, so they don't get to just steal from people. That's what I'm arguing against. Gas tax, food tax, property tax, sales tax, breathing air tax. Yeah, the idea that other countries do this, so it's good for America to do it, or other countries do that, and so it's justified. How do you feel about Trump treats women? A lot of the women that he associates with, he treats them well. I know he's done a lot of disgusting things in the past. I know there's plenty of allegations out there against him. I weigh them out as I see them. I know that there's a couple instances, and I'm just like, that's completely disgusting. I don't know why people would agree with that or defend that. How about the government make money by doing trade deals? Ooh, if they want to be a corporation, they can be their own corporation. That'd be fantastic. When you enjoy public facilities, you're stealing too. So now you've gotten into this area where you're talking about public property, and let it be known that there's only a certain amount of federal property, despite what the federal government has done through BLM and everything else. They're only enumerated Washington, D.C. So federal lands, public lands like that, that's actually is not something that you can say, oh, you're stealing too. No. It's actually is a public property that's actually is a public commodity. And there's a difference between those two. If you want to talk about it on the state level, it's the state level. State gets to do what it wants to do. If it wants to be immoral, it can be immoral. Just like the federal government wants to be immoral, so it's immoral. Oh, I know they're trying to strawman me. I love this. Income tax and other taxes, I don't agree. I lean more towards single low tax. It should be, and it should be a fair tax. It should be a fair tax, which means fair for everyone. I don't care what your income is. If you're $10,000, if you're spending $10,000 or you're spending $100,000, it should be the same percentage wise across the board. Don't take more from people just because they're being more productive. That's disgusting. And Stefan, back to your point, I love it when people try to strawman me because it's so easily defective. Yeah, Rican, that's actually is true. He actually has quite a substantial amount of women in his administration. He does have some black women and some black Latino, or some Latinos. And specifically about that, right, there was the woman, I completely forgot her name, who was recording her with Trump, her with John Kelly and everyone else. She made news, and it was actually a part of the Trump administration. So right there, we have some evidence that people can quickly grab back on there, and from their memory bank. How is that disgusting? Stealing from people? Stealing from people is disgusting. If you stole from me, I would call you a disgusting, horrible person. I don't say that because somebody was elected that now they can do immoral acts and think that it's okay. I believe that each person puts on their pants the same way and should be called out for the same actions. I appreciate it, Regan. And that's fine. I welcome people. I want people to come in here who dissent and actually are able to carry on a conversation. I know that there's a couple of people that join in just incapable of holding any kind of a coherent, intelligent conversation. No, discussing the fact that the more you produce, the more they tax. I agree. No. Discussing the fact that the more you produce, the more they tax sounds fair to me. That's disgusting. Jeremiah, are you a fan of the Nordic countries? Are you a fan of like Sweden, Finland, Norway? Yeah, man. I having an open mind is the most beautiful thing ever. If you're a fan of those countries, they're all fair tax. You punish people for being successful. Exactly. They all have a fair tax. Everyone pays the same taxes by percentage. They also don't have a minimum wage. Kind of a cool idea. Maybe our government should not be involved with the transactions between two consenting adults. That would be kind of beautiful. But instead, you have crazy statists that say, no, they need to be involved. They need to make sure that these people are taken care of because otherwise they'll be just nothing good will ever happen. I'll tell you, a lot of the jobs I worked at, the companies go above and beyond to ensure that people stay there. Sweden is happy with their elected government. See, Rican, Evidence A. They do worse than Europe. Rich people are getting destroyed tax-wise. But the Nordic countries, which are the ones I specifically called out, Norway, Finland, and Sweden, they have a flat tax. And they don't punish people for making more money. I think that that's the more fair way to do it. If you're going to tax from, or if you're going to steal from people, steal from everyone equally. Don't decide based on how successful somebody is. Trump is entering the rally. You guys go on, catch up with Trump, see what Trump's talking about. I'm probably going to miss it. Rich people are not in Sweden. Yeah, because they drove them all out because they're socialist. Their socialist ideals, their social safety nets. But at least they're laxing on those. They're removing those as much as they can, as quickly and as quickly and as efficiently as they can, because they know that it was bankrupting them. So it's a good thing that, these socialist countries that a lot of people want to point at, they're really reverting at a high rate of speed. In fact, Bernie Sanders, when he was talking about, I believe it was Sweden itself, members of the Swedish government were like trying to contact Bernie and like, don't say that. We are not socialist, and we are moving away from this. We are moving away from this as quickly as we can, because this is not working. A flat tax is still a regressive tax. It's still a tax, and so it's still disgusting. Absolutely. USA should not dictate to Sweden. Who? Evidence B, Rican. 714 Rican. So basically, you want to produce and choose how much and when you want to give. Oh, liberty. Yes. Yes. Basically, I want to be free. I want to have liberty. I want to make my own choices. I want to be my own man. I want to be my own person. If I want to go shoot up, that's not possible. It's not possible because you believe that you have authority over people, or you can elect people to have authority over others. You want to control others. You want to control their thoughts, their actions, their activities. And I'm just saying, as long as somebody's not aggressing against somebody else, as long as I'm not hurting somebody else, why is it that I can't sit at home, smoke pot, have gay marriage, or do whatever I want? Can you appreciate where blacks come from with oppression? Yeah, so when it comes to like the oppression, we live in a society. So what did I say that was wrong? What did I say that was impossible? When it comes from the oppression of blacks, yes, I can appreciate and empathize with the horrible conditions that they were in during the times of slavery, during the times of Crow and everything else. I can definitely appreciate that. And so it's nice to see that the country and the world as a whole has really grown away from that in large swaths of it. But there for sure is still some room to grow. There's still some room for change. I think as a general rule, though, and here's where a lot of people, this is where the controversy begins. I think as a general rule, here in America, it's the best that it can be across the country. That doesn't, or not across the country, across the world. That doesn't mean that it's as good as it can get. It can get better. It can continue to strive and do better. But I think that overall, I think that we are definitely the best melting pot in the world. I'm pretty hard pressed to find another nation that performs at the same capacity in which we do, and is able to kind of get past a lot of the past in so many ways. I know that there's a lot of people that want to reawaken the past and act as if it's a common occurrence of today, but it's just really not there. The facts just don't support the claim. I hope I answered your question thoroughly on that. I'm sure I'll get some pushback, and that's fine.
You pushback?
Toronto, London, what? Are you? No, are you talking about like specific cities? Why are you talking about specific cities, Jeremiah? I'm so confused by you. I'm gonna be honest. We all think different. Yeah, so no, we absolutely do think differently. I think that even with the recent crises that have been going on in this country, I think that was a huge huge indication of it. Why aren't Mississippi blacks at Mississippi rally? Ask them. said melting pot. We are the best. I'm saying Toronto, London. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we are one of the best melting pots. We are probably the best. When it comes to London or Toronto, there's huge issues when it comes to London. First off, London has this huge area. There is a lot of racial hatred there. I have friends who live in London. That live all across the UK, and they talk about this. There's a lot of racial hatred that's there, and it's being suppressed and it's being limited. And even, have you ever stopped and wondered why the police are now incriminating people for offending other people? Being the most multicultural does not mean you're the most successful at being multicultural. So that's a common misconception. It's another one of those straw mans that was being referred to earlier. But there's a reason why the law enforcement there is now able to go out and get people for offensive jokes or for hurting people's feelings, and that's because they have no way of adapting with each other. Basically, what had occurred there. What had occurred was basically they had some divisions there. It wasn't a huge one. And basically they just threw in more decisions, right? They brought in a bunch of refugees. They brought in too many refugees. They were already having issues of overpopulation. So you already had people getting upset and getting frustrated with each other. And then you just dumped in a lot more people, and there's no assimilation. There's no coming together because they were just put in there. And so you have like a larger division there. And so to call it a great multiculturalism experiment is dishonest at best. Yeah. Race relations is much better in London than the USA. So like I said, I have friends that live over there in London and the UK that come over to America, and they disagree vehemently with you. London is a shitstorm right now. Unarmed cops running away from mobs of Muslim refugees. Yeah, but don't worry, it's a crazy success. London is happy with their Muslim mayor. So you talk about Sadiq Khan, who's an idiot, who banned guns. They banned knives. Banned offensive speech, banned reporting on news, on charges and everything else. They banned everything, and a large swath of the Londonese people are getting are ready to leave. Be Rich, what up, man? How's it going? I appreciate you joining in. No, it's not dishonest. Race and relations, the USA is terrible. You talking about cops? Let's not talk about cops. So we could get into the conversation of cops. I would love that conversation. Race relations in the USA is terrible. It's not nearly as terrible as the media is projecting out. There's a lot of hyper focus. There's a lot of hypersensitivity when it comes to that. They want to promulgate this. They want to keep this division. They want to keep the hatred. They want to keep people being fueled up against the others. And sadly, it just seems like only one side of the coin is playing a part of that. One side of the political coin. It's really not nearly as bad as what the media is projecting it as. I've been through plenty of places. I know plenty of people that have been all around this country. It is not nearly as horrific as what a lot of people are trying to project it as. But you wanted to talk about cops. And what's amazing to me is the statistics. There have been official studies. If you're black in the USA, you have 2.8 more chance of being shot than a white man. So that's interesting that you brought up that statistic. Would you also be interested in finding out about the statistic in accordance with the FBI study done in 2015 that 51% of murders, of homicides, are committed by black men, which is roughly around 6% of the population. African Americans make up 13% of the population, so we're going to cut that in half and round it down. If you want, we can round it up to 7%. So there's a major disproportion there. But while we're talking about that, we can also talk about that in 5% of the counties, 50% the murders happen. So is it a racial thing, or is it a cultural thing? Obviously, it's a cultural thing. Obviously, it's just a localized issue that we have a major lack of value of life in these areas. And so there's a fundamental issue there, and you wanted to kind of bring it up as a racial thing, which I thought was interesting, seen as the largest population of people that are being killed are Black people. And who are they being killed by? By Black people. So that's not really a racial division there, but let's just put that away. When it comes to white men being shot by cops or Black men being shot by cops, white men are being shot more often than Black men are being shot by cops. Of course, there's a larger population, so that would be what would be expected. It's two different things. You're deflecting. If Blacks commit more crime, it doesn't explain how the police is acting. Wait a minute. So what you're saying is that if people are committing crimes, that they would not be more likely to be involved with the police, and interactions with the police would be much more docile or more domestic or more friendly in that regard. I think that you've lost the train of thought on being able to think things through clearly. Poverty will do that, break sympathy. Poverty, and yes, that's where a large swath of those 5% of the counties. That's a major factor in these things. When you have low employment numbers, when you have high taxation, when you have a high social safety net, but there's no business, there's nothing to keep people busy. They find other ways. They go through the black market. They create gangs, they create crimes in order just to survive or just to bide their own time. And that's been a major fundamental issue. And it's also amazing that a lot of these counties are being led by Democrats for decades, which is just another argument that you at least need to go Republican, or in my opinion, go Libertarian. They're trigger happy with both of them. Whites are being shot more often than Blacks are. But yes, I agree. Whenever a shooting comes from a cop, I sit there and I read the reports, I read the news, and I figure out, was it a justified shooting? Was it a racial shooting? And honestly, to be 100% honest, there's been a couple cases in which the officer has been absolutely wrong, and there's been a couple instances in which people have protested and the officers were in the right. I didn't lose my train of thought. Thank you. The police is a public servant. They're not supposed to discriminate you. So now you're associating that they're discriminating. That's interesting. That now they're discriminating, right? So you haven't been able to provide anything other than a random statistic in which I kind of explained it with the other statistics, in which more people are committing murder, more people are committing very hostile, very violent crimes. And so they're more likely to be in engagements. And so if you're more likely to be in engagement with people committing violent crimes, what's the rules for engagement, right? You're accelerated at a faster rate because there's a process, right? So when a police officer catches up to somebody, he goes, all right, I talk with them. All right, talking's not working. I warn them. Warning them doesn't work. I pull out a baton. Baton's not working. I pull out a taser. Taser's not working. I shoot him with the taser. Shooting with the taser doesn't work. Now I can escalate the force if I'm still feeling threatened. If somebody has a weapon against you, you escalate. The escalation of force goes right up there to the top. Right, because the officer has the right to protect his own life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, just like any other American. So you have these things, and understanding the entire process, it's very difficult to go, it's obviously they're discriminating, especially when you look at, I believe it was University of Washington or it was Yale, I forgot which one, came out with a study, and they actually showed that officers were more likely to pull over white people for the same traffic violations than black people or any form of minority, because they didn't want to be seen as racially discriminating. So they were actually allowing people to go away. Most criminals are non-white too. I'm not even attributing it to race. And so we can look at everything in the grand picture of things, and we can understand that there is obviously a deep-rooted issue. And I realize we're going way over time. There's a deep-rooted issue with violence in this country in certain aspects, in certain areas. And that, over pulling the trigger. Are you talking about for his statistics of 2.8 times more likely to be shot by a black man is than to be a white man? So I'll give you the basic premise of how this has actually been structured. So you take the white person committing a crime versus a black person committing crime. You add the math to it to actually put in there proportionate to the population, and then you also talk about the interactions in which they were shot, when they were threatened to be shot, and you would actually be able to take those. And so it is a gross misrepresentation, because they are taking people that are committing violent crimes at a higher I don't want to say per capita, but basically by population, they're doing it at a higher rate, and so they're more likely to be involved with that. Oh yeah, are you talking about the Charleston man? You're talking about the Charleston man, yeah, where he was actually was the judicial process actually worked, and he was punished for his crimes and was given manslaughter, I believe. So even instances like that, we can see where the system works, and we can talk about that. And so I'm not saying that things don't go awry. Could you tell me the last time that an unarmed white man was shot? Or are we going to understand there's a fundamental flaw in what our media provides us, and they're going to provide us something to add to a narrative, not to take away from their own, right? People are being shot by the police quite frequently. I disagree with most of them. I want to see them before I disagree with them. But we can't just say, look, somebody was shot, therefore it was wrong. Right? We actually have to look at things in context. We actually have to look at them. And so I'm glad that you brought up the Charleston cop, because he was one that was unjustified. Yeah, stop and frisk laws. Yeah, because, Fourth Amendment doesn't matter. That's fine, Jeremiah. You can have your opinion as much as you want to. You can have your opinion. I'm glad that you have an opinion. I'm glad that you are in a country where you can say things that you want to say. I'm thankful that you live in this great country. There are less black men than white men, and more blacks being shot. Yep, but what was important was talking about the proportion of blacks committing, say, murder versus whites and everything else. It's not about opinions; it's about facts. No, that was an opinion that you stated. Facts cannot be disputed. Opinions can. Yours was an opinion, right? When I say there's two genders, right? That's not an opinion. That's a fact, right? You can't dispute that. You can't dispute that with science. You can't dispute that with logic. That's a fact. But, that's fine. And to be honest, right? More of a conservative. That's cute. I'm a conservative now, guys. Hi, guys. I'm a conservative. I like religious liberties. I like to protect all religions. I like to ban parts of guns. I like the Patriot Act. I like the National Defense Authorization Act. I don't like portions of the Constitution, which I will act as if they don't exist. And I will just be a good old Republican conservative. No, that's not me. I'm glad that you misrepresented me there, but that's fine. Appreciate it, Rican, for your service. It's to correct you, to give you the truth. I am a libertarian. I am smallest government as possible. Remove a lot of the things that the officers do. So this was a planned scope that I had, and I failed to do so. I want to reduce the scope of what the officers can do. Right? DUIs are unconstitutional. Right, to go in and search somebody's car because they're driving down this certain specific road is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court decisions, there were two of them that actually supported this claim, or that supported the DUI checkpoints, were wrong, and the majority was activist judges. That needs to go away. Just because you are driving down a road does not give somebody a reason to search you or your vehicle. Reduce that. Decriminalize all drugs. There's no moral or logical justification on saying I get to control what you put in your body. 400 years of slavery on black people in the U.S. The context, give me a break. Okay, so you want to talk about things that were happening 200 years ago and act as if they're still applicable to today. That's beautiful. I'm glad that you're standing there and you're wanting to say this. Can I ask you, are you a Democrat? Because I would ask you why you flip sides, because the Democratic Party was against the ending of slavery here in the United States. They actually didn't vote at all in favor of it. So I'm wondering why you decided to flip stances. If we're just going to pull things from decades or centuries ago, and you're going to act as if it's applicable to today, then I would like to know why you're not applicable to those times of those days. Because let's be honest. If you want to pull things from history, I will put you into history and I will ask you why you're on that side, why you're on the wrong side of history. So feel free to sit here and straw man some more, bro. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter that you'd be in support of continuing slavery. I got you. I understand. I appreciate you for being such an honest person. I appreciate you for being such an honest person. Thank you. Beautiful. Oh, don't worry. Jeremiah would have voted for that KKK member as well. All about keeping the slavery down, bros. So get rid of DUI checkpoints. Get rid of a lot of the searches. Get rid of a lot of the capacity for the officers to just investigate people, just to stop people, stop and frisk. Certainly, you were mocking me. I was having a serious conversation. Well, you were stating that your opinions were facts, and so that was the starting of the degradation of the serious conversation, if you will. And then you were trying to say that the 400 years of slavery of 200 years of the past was the context, and so therefore is applicable to today. So if you're trying to play time traveler, it would be it's extremely difficult in order to say that's a serious conversation. I hope you can understand that train of thought, how that is not applicable for today. Now, if we were at the last year of those 400 years, yes, let's have that conversation, but we are not. So I think using that is wrong, right? If I were to say, look, if I were to pull what Lindsey Graham was talking about when it came to this Judge Kavanaugh thing, where Lindsey Graham says, is this how we're going to do all Supreme Court nominations? Then this is how we're going to do it. Let's play ball, right? If we're going to use the past in order to create vitriol or to create hatred in the future, no, I disagree, right? If we want to use the past and use it to learn from, absolutely, let's go. You don't see how it's wrong. You don't see how it's wrong to try to conflate 400 years ago, between 200 and 600 years by your math, between 200 to 600 years ago was applicable for today. You don't see the misstep in there. You don't miss the 200 years in between. I appreciate it, Regan. Hopefully you hit that follow button and join in on future conversations. I appreciate you for joining in tonight, man. So if you're not catching up with that part, if you're missing the last 200 years and you're like, nothing has happened, nothing has changed, and so we're still in Jim Crow era, we're still in segregation, we're still in having people in shackles, I think that's really that really shows the dishonesty of what you're trying to project here. And I think that's really all that you are doing, is just trying to project. I think that you'd be what Malcolm X would say was the worst thing ever, and that is, no, you were saying the context. The context was important, as if the context was important. The context is not important to the day. Context is important if we're having a discussion about how bad slavery was. But I think that you're really projecting, and you're actually the person that Malcolm X was talking about, and that was the sheep or the wolf in sheep's clothing, and that is the white liberal. I think that would be an accurate depiction of what you're attempting to do here. Because you've provided one fact, and then you've provided a lot of opinions and a lot of subjective thoughts. But I'm not trying to demean you in any way, but I think you need to get your facts together a little bit better before you come up and step up in the big leagues. But with that, guys, No, man, Fuzzy, I can't get down with that, bro. Because there's people of all races that are stuck in poverty for the rest of ever. They make poor decisions. There are people that were in poverty that got out of it because they make great decisions. It's poverty is a choice. And this is where a lot of people turn on me. Poverty is a choice. You can make the decision to get out of it. It's just a struggle. It is difficult, but you got to do it. I gave you facts, but you can't understand. Black people will understand my point. See, but you're now arguing to a point of authority. Like, if somebody has to be this in order to understand my point, and if you're not this, then you won't understand, and everything else. Because you've only provided one statistic, and you provided facts, if you will. That's really the obstacle there. But I gotta go. I gotta bounce, guys. We've been running real late, so I appreciate you all for joining in. I am Mr. Merkel, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. Next time I will see you guys is Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. I appreciate you guys all. I look forward to the continued support and everything else that you guys have been providing me. I thank you. As always, please like, please retweet, please go on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. New channel, so need all the support I can get on getting them subscribers up. Hope you guys all have a great night. I'll see you guys on Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern. I am Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon.